Welcome to Barracuda Bites Podcast. I am your host, Barracuda. We are going to take a deep dive into the ideas that shape how we see the world. Today, we're launching a special series on Ronald H. Nash's classic book, The Meaning of History. Nash was a brilliant Christian philosopher and theologian who taught at institutions like Reformed Theological Seminary and the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. In this concise 1998 book, he doesn't just recount battles and dates. He asks the deeper questions. Does history have any real meaning, purpose, or direction? Or is it just one random thing after another? Whether you're new to philosophy or revisiting Nash, this episode will give you a rich, reflective deep dive. We'll unpack an overview of the study known as the philosophy of history, why it's inescapable, the major components the philosophy of history must address, and practical tests to evaluate them. By the end, you'll be equipped to examine your own assumptions about the meaning of history with greater clarity and confidence. Grab a notebook, settle in, and let's begin. In Chapter 1, Nash sets the stage by distinguishing between two very different ways people approach the past. We'll explore what scientific history is, as opposed to speculative or philosophical history. We'll look at the big questions philosophers of history ask, and we'll begin touching on the major patterns people have seen in human events, patterns that will dominate the rest of the book. By the end of this episode, you will have a clearer lens for understanding not just the past, but why it matters for your worldview today and for the future. Again, grab a notebook because this is lesson material. Let's jump in. Let's begin with Section 1. What is a philosophy of history and why does it matter? So, what exactly is history? In his book, Nash starts by making an important distinction that clears up a lot of confusion with the two approaches to history that exist in the field of philosophy and religion. The first, scientific history, attempts to arrive at an accurate account of past events using scientific evidence minus the lessons learned along the way, predicting future events or grasping the meaning of human history as a whole. This is the attempt simply to arrive at an accurate account of past events based on sufficient evidence. Think of it like forensic science. Historians here act as detectives. They gather documents, artifacts, and eyewitness accounts and try to reconstruct what actually happened without jumping to big lessons or predictions. No grand theories, just the facts as best as we can know them. Just the facts. This kind of work is valuable. It's the foundation. Without a good evidence-based reconstruction of events, everything else floats in the air. Nash notes that this approach doesn't concern itself with learning moral lessons from the past, predicting where we're headed, or grasping the meaning of human history as a whole. It's focused, empirical, and humble about its limits. But Nash says there's another level, speculative history, or the philosophy of history. This goes beneath the surface of individual events to find their inner, ultimate significance. It's like moving from looking at scattered puzzle pieces to seeing the complete picture on the box. Here, we're not just asking what happened, but why it happened this way. What does the whole story mean? Speculative history attempts to grasp the meaning of history as a whole, looking beneath the surface to find ultimate significance. Both approaches work in tandem, uncovering the meaning of history. What is the difference between the two? One approach sees the trees, the other sees the forest. Think of a forest with all its trees. There is a pattern. Now, let's move on to section 2 here and look at the 4 major patterns of history. Nash points out 3 key questions that speculative philosophers of history wrestle with. What is the pattern of history? Is there a repeating shape or direction to events over time? 2. What is the mechanism of history? What drives change? God, human ideas, economic forces, great individuals, random chance, or something else? 3. What is the purpose or value of history? Does it have a goal, or is it ultimately meaningless? What, if anything, makes human actions in time worthwhile? What we know is that there are 4 major patterns to history, as many philosophers have advanced. Take, for example, St. Augustine and Immanuel Kant, who have suggested a linear pattern to history, where history has a goal and an end towards which it is moving. The linear view. This sees history as a straight line with a definite beginning, middle, and purposeful end. It moves towards a goal. Nash argues this view lines up best with Scripture and Christian theology. The Bible presents history as starting with creation, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, involving a fall into sin, then a long story of redemption through God's interventions, covenants, and ultimately the second coming of Jesus Christ. It heads towards a climax, judgment, resurrection, new heavens and new earth in Revelations chapter 21 and 22. Time has direction. Events like the Exodus or the cross are unique, non-repeatable acts of God with eternal significance. Again, St. Augustine of Hippo famously developed this in the City of God, responding to the fall of Rome by saying, history isn't just pagan cycles, it's God's story with a redemptive arc. Now, the Stoics, they step in and have advanced what we call a cyclical theory or pattern, where history repeats itself in one or more ways. The cyclical view. This sees history as constantly repeating itself, like the seasons or the rise and fall of empires. Ancient cultures often thought this way because they observed natural cycles: day, night, planting, harvest. Think of the Stoics in Greek and Roman thought, or some Eastern philosophy with ideas of eternal return. History goes in circles. Civilizations rise, peak, decline, collapse, and then a new one starts the cycle again. There's no ultimate goal or end to the story, just endless repetition. This can feel comforting because it makes the future predictable in a way, but it also robs history of a unique, one-time meaning. As one thinker put it, nothing really new ever happens under the sun. Now, some philosophers combine the linear pattern with the cyclical theory to advance the spiral theory or pattern, the spiral view. It's associated with Arnold Toynbee. This combines elements of both. There's repetition, Civilizations rise and challenge each other in similar ways, but also overall progress or movement towards something higher. It's like a spiritual staircase going around and around, but also upward. Now, Nash examines this as an interesting hybrid, but ultimately finds it less satisfying than a robust linear Christian model. There is not only repetition in history, but also progress towards an expected end or goal. Finally, the chaotic theory or pattern is advancing a belief in history where there's just no meaning or pattern at all. These aren't just academic questions or assertions. Some thinkers reject all patterns and embrace the chaotic view. History is random dots with no connections, no cause and effects that matter, no meaning at all. This can feel liberating to some. No grand narrative to obey. But Nash and others point out that it undermines morality, accountability, and hope. If nothing connects, why learn from the past? Why strive for justice? Nash, as a Christian philosopher, defends the linear view as one most consistent with a biblical worldview. History is providential, goal-directed, and meaningful because it's under God's sovereignty. Christianity is uniquely a historical religion. Our faith rests on real events in time. The incarnation, the crucifixion, the resurrection, not just timeless myths. Which of these patterns resonates with how you currently view the news or your own life story? Nash warns that flawed answers to the meaning of history have led to real-world disasters like ideologies that justify genocide or totalitarian regimes. A bad philosophy of history can deform entire societies. That's why a Christian approach matters so much. Think about it. When you read a history book or watch a documentary, is it mostly listing dates and battles, or is it trying to tell you a bigger story about progress, decline, or divine purpose? Does it explain the mechanisms used to change the future, and what are those mechanisms? In Section 3, we're going to look at the 5 major mechanisms to explain how changes in history take place. Now, philosophers have advanced a mechanism to explain how changes in history take place. For example, Hegel's world hero, Vico's divine providence, Marx's economic determinism, and Toynbee's formula of change and response, along with Spengler's theory of each culture following a determined biological course of birth, growth, and decay, ending in death. Still, we come full circle, asking the same question from the beginning. What is the purpose or value of history? Does history have meaning and purpose? Is there an end or a goal towards which history is ultimately moving? How do we arrive at the answers? Is it experience? Is it empirical? Is it experimentation? Is it prediction, fate, or divine purpose for which we will discover the meaning of history? History isn't neutral. If you adopt a cyclical view, you might become fatalistic. Whatever will be, will be. If chaos, despair, or nihilism sets in. Progressive secular views, like certain 19th century evolutionary ideas of inevitable human improvement, can lead to overconfidence or justify harm in the name of progress. The Christian linear view, by contrast, gives dignity to every movement. Your actions today matter because they fit into God's bigger redemptive story. It balances realism about sin and suffering with hope in ultimate justice and renewal. As Nash's broader work emphasizes, Christianity rejects both pagan cycles and godless utopias. Instead, it offers a purposeful drama where even evil is overruled for good. Think of Joseph's story in Genesis. You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. Nash also ties this to epistemology and ethics. How we know the past and how we value human choices depend on our assumptions about time and purpose. A biblical view grounds objective truth in a God who acts in history, not in subjective experience or power struggles. In the lessons that follow in the book, Nash will examine key thinkers like Augustine, the linear champion, Kant, Hegel, Marx, with their own twist on progress, Toynbee's spiral, and more, always evaluating them against Scripture. For Christians today, this has a practical payoff. It helps us read the Bible not as disconnected stories, but as one unfolding narrative of creation, fall, redemption, and consummation. It equips us to engage culture. When someone says history is on our side or the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice without God, we can gently probe the assumptions underneath. Take a moment, and I want you to ask how your view of history has shaped how you face the future. Optimism, fear, or with steady trust? Now, this last section, Section 4, the Christian importance in using speculative and scientific history, is something we're going to close out with, but we're not going to leave it. We're going to kind of allow it to just hang there and go back to it several times as we go through this study. Now, Ronald Nash provides airtight answers to the questions. What is the purpose or value of history? Well, scientific history, according to Nash, is important because Christianity is a historical religion whose beliefs are based on first-hand historical accounts. God stepped into history, lived among us, was crucified, died, was buried, and after 3 days, he rose from the grave. Christianity is anchored in history, in eyewitness accounts of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. History is a revelation of who God is and for what purpose and value he has attached to history. Nash points out that speculative history also holds a vital place within Christianity, for the events leading up to and surrounding the life of Jesus Christ illuminate the meaning and coherence of the Christian faith itself. Returning to Christianity's earliest documents, scriptures, alongside the accounts preserved by secular historians, provides believers with a solid, historically informed foundation for understanding and articulating our faith. Now let's wrap this up with some clear takeaways from Nash. Distinguish scientific history, facts, and evidence from philosophy of history. Meaning and patterns are both needed, but don't confuse them. History's big questions, patterns, mechanisms, and purpose reveal our deepest assumptions about reality, God, and humanity. The three main patterns are cyclical, linear, and spiral, with chaos as a fourth radical alternative. Nash favors the linear view as biblically faithful. Christianity uniquely makes history meaningful. It has a beginning, a creation, a center, Jesus Christ, and an end. New creation. Events matter. People matter. Redemption is real. Next time you study history or current events, ask yourself, what pattern am I assuming? Does it align with Scripture's linear, purposeful arc? How does trusting God's sovereignty and history free me from anxiety and cynicism? Nash's book is short and readable, perfect for small groups or personal study. It will change how you think about the past, present, and future. Now, that's our deep dive into Chapter 1 of The Meaning of History by Ronald H. Nash. In future episodes, we'll tackle the major thinkers and how Nash evaluates them from a Christian perspective. If this episode helped you, share it with a friend, leave a review, subscribe, or tell me what you think. What's one question from today's lesson you'll ponder this week? Now, thanks for joining me. Until next time, remember, history isn't just what happened. It's part of a story with meaning, written by a sovereign God who invites us into it. Now, take a moment. How has your view of history shaped how you face the future? With optimism, fear, or steady trust? Thank you for joining me on this podcast. I'm Barracuda, and this is Barracuda Bites. I hope that you will stick with me during this study as we continue through Ronald H. Nash's book, The Philosophy of History.